It is shortly before midnight on the 4th of August 1964, and President Lyndon B. Johnson interrupts the nation's sleep to broadcast an important message. North Vietnamese ships had allegedly attacked US Navy vessels on the high seas close to the Gulf of Tonkin. Painting America as the victim, Johnson sought to gain more powers while publicly preaching peace. Within minutes, he would greenlight Operation Pierce Arrow, a swift, brutal retaliation. As dawn broke on the 5th of August 1964, US warplanes screamed towards Vietnamese shores, while Johnson's words of "This outrage will only strengthen our resolve" still echoed across the nation. Bombs rained down on North Vietnamese targets, slowly igniting the powder keg of what would become America's most controversial war. Only 2 days later, on the 7th of August 1964, Congress handed President Johnson a loaded gun. The Gulf of Tonkin resolution, sparked by the murky naval incident, was passed in Congress, granting LBJ unprecedented power to wage war in Southeast Asia, all without a formal declaration of war. This historic document, passed in Congress amidst a zealous fervor where any opposition was labeled as treason, became the legal loophole that would plunge America into the quagmire of Vietnam. It authorized the president to use any means necessary, including military force, to defend US allies in the region. With the stroke of a pen, Congress had unleashed a war that would define a generation and forever change the face of American politics. This is the Historiographer, and in this video, we will explore the history behind the often confusing Gulf of Tonkin Incident, and whether or not this incident was a fabricated lie aimed to enrich LBJ and his warmongering clique. To understand the incident, we must begin with context. The 1954 Geneva Conference aimed to resolve issues from the First Indochina War, consequently dividing Vietnam into North and South. These accords called for unification elections by July of 1956, while also prohibiting foreign military presence and political interference. However, no unification occurred, and by 1961, South Vietnamese President Ngo Dinh Diem faced growing opposition. Meanwhile, Communist North Vietnam planned to revive the southern insurgency, subsequently approving a People's War against the South and invading Laos to support the Ho Chi Minh Trail. As a result, the guerrilla force, the Viet Cong, escalated their rebellion, with 40,000 communist soldiers infiltrating the South between 1961 and 63. In response, Johnson increased US military involvement to counter the perceived Soviet expansion, thereby applying the Cold War containment policy. On top of the US Army, the CIA's Operation Plan 34 Alpha and the Navy's De Soto program continued covert operations against North Vietnam. Shortly after July 1964, CIA-sponsored Laotian fighter bombers attacked North Vietnamese border outposts. These actions likely appeared to Hanoi as a coordinated effort to escalate the conflict. It is necessary to note that the Gulf of Tonkin incident is a misnomer, as the incident is actually two separate ones occurring on separate days. It is with this tense atmosphere in Southeast Asia that the first real incident occurred. In July of 1964, tensions escalated along North Vietnam's territorial waters due to South Vietnamese commando raids and airborne operations. The situation reached a critical point on July 30th when South Vietnamese commandos attacked a North Vietnamese radar station on Hon Me Island. The following day, USS Maddox began intelligence-gathering patrols along the North Vietnamese coast, venturing within a few miles off of Hon Me Island. By the 1st of August, North Vietnamese patrol boats were tracking Maddox, with intercepted communications suggesting an imminent attack. On the 2nd of August, as Maddox resumed the patrol, 3 North Vietnamese P-4 torpedo boats began the pursuit. The situation quickly escalated when Maddox fired 3 warning shots as the boats approached. In response, the North Vietnamese boats launched an attack, prompting Maddox to report evasive maneuvers and return fire with its guns. The confrontation intensified as 2 torpedo boats closed to within 5 nautical miles, releasing torpedoes that Maddox managed to evade. The US Navy fighter jets came to the rescue, with FA Crusader jets from USS Ticonderoga soon joining the fray and engaging the P-4s. Despite the intense exchange, Maddox sustained only minor damage from machine gun fire. with no reported casualties. With the two sides claiming provocation, this brief skirmish evolved into a significant event that would further escalate tensions in the region, the second Gulf of Tonkin Incident. Indeed, it is the second alleged attack that would prompt Johnson's address to the US. On the 4th of August 1964, the USS Maddox and USS Turner Joy conducted a patrol off North Vietnam's coast, despite orders to stay at least 11 miles offshore. They received radar and sonar signals that they believed indicated an attack by North Vietnamese Navy, and they fired on unknown targets for 2 hours. However, despite the intense quote-unquote battle, there was no wreckage, bodies, or physical evidence of any enemy presence. Captain Herrick, the captain of the USS Maddox, later questioned the incident, suggesting that the reported contacts and torpedoes might have been due to freak weather effects and overeager sonarmen. He cabled that many reported contacts and torpedoes fired appeared to be doubtful, and that it was possible that there was no actual visual sighting by the USS Maddox. He said, "Review of action makes many reported contacts and torpedoes fired appear doubtful. Freak weather effects on radar and overeager sonarmen may have accounted for many reports. No actual visual sightings by Maddox. Suggest a complete evaluation before any further action taken." Despite these doubts, President Johnson decided to respond to the second attack based on the assumption that it had occurred. The Johnson administration based its conclusion on communications intercepts erroneously assessed to be North Vietnamese preparations to carry out an attack. Following reports of the second attack, Johnson swiftly addressed the nation in a televised speech, seeking authorization from Congress to protect American forces in Southeast Asia, saying,
"My fellow Americans, as President and Commander-in-Chief, it is my duty to the American people to report that renewed hostile actions against United States ships on the high seas in the Gulf of Tonkin have today required me to order the military forces of the United States to take action in reply. This new act of aggression, aimed directly at our own forces, again brings home to all of us in the United States the importance of the struggle for peace and security in Southeast Asia. It is a solemn responsibility to have to order even limited military action by forces whose overall strength is as vast and as awesome as those of the United States of America."
In response, on August 7th, the Senate passed the Gulf of Tonkin resolution, granting LBJ immense war powers with just 2 dissenting votes. The House of Representatives subsequently approved it unanimously. This incident and the resulting resolution served as justification for increased US involvement in Vietnam. Believing intensified bombing would compel Hanoi to yield, Johnson and his advisors initiated Operation Rolling Thunder on the 13th of February 1965, which was a sustained aerial bombardment of North Vietnam that lasted until the spring of 1967. Johnson also sanctioned the initial deployment of regular ground troops to combat the Viet Cong in Vietnam, thereby involving more than 2.5 million Americans in a war so far away from home. As for whether the second Gulf of Tonkin incident was a lie or not, I will leave you with Robert McNamara's words, who said,
"No, it was just confusion. And events afterwards showed that our judgment that we'd been attacked that day was wrong. It didn't happen."
So yes, while the first Gulf of Tonkin incident definitely did occur, the second was a made-up lie, based on shaky evidence and invented by LBJ, who by the way had stocks in American defense companies, to enrich himself and his shares in the military-industrial complex. Unfortunately, it would take 350,000 American casualties and 2 million Vietnamese dead for the US public to wake up from the tragedy, the Vietnam War. If you like this video, then consider subscribing to spread history. This has been the Historiographer, and for now, see you in the next video.